So in today's video, I'm going to be going through every Western Conference team's biggest strength and biggest weakness so far as a team. So far about 20 games through the short 72-game season in the 2020 and 2021 season. If you guys follow the channel, you know that 2 days ago I uploaded this video for the Eastern Conference side of things, and I went through every single Eastern Conference team and evaluated their biggest strength and biggest weakness so far this season. So if you missed that video, be sure to check it out. It'll be linked down below in the description. So to support the channel, go ahead and watch that one as well. And for the Western Conference video, this one's pretty interesting as well, since we have a lot of very powerful teams in the Western Conference and a few teams that have disappointed so far this season that have a few weaknesses. So I'm going to be going through and evaluating each team's biggest strength and biggest weakness in the Western Conference. I'll go in alphabetical order, so let's get started. So starting off with the Dallas Mavericks, and to be completely honest, it was actually a bit of a struggle to find a big strength for them. They've been a bit of a disappointment this season, especially with the way they played last year. Right now, so far this season, their MVP candidate Luka Doncic really has to carry them, and he's even underperforming a little bit, and they're a few games under 500. Last year, they had one of the best offenses we've ever seen. They were number one in the league in offensive efficiency by far, and absolutely dominating on that end of the floor. And so far this season, it hasn't nearly been the same, but if I had to pick a main strength, it'd probably be inside scoring. They have a few guys that can score very well down low, especially Luka Doncic when he's driving to the rim. And then for their biggest weakness, they have quite a few so far this year, but their biggest is three-point shooting. They're one of the worst three-point shooting teams right now in the league in terms of efficiency, and guys like Josh Richardson, Kristaps Porzingis, Tim Hardaway Jr., and even Luka, when he has the ball in his hands, has to step up their three-point shooting if this team wants to contend for a playoff spot and for a championship. I think the loss of Seth Curry is really hurting them as well, so their main weakness right now is definitely three-point shooting. Next up, we got the Denver Nuggets, and before I talk about the Nuggets, I'll get this out of the way. Denver, play Bol Bol already. Come on, you're wasting his potential. Anyway, I've made a video already on that, ranting about why Bol Bol should play and how his potential is being wasted. But in terms of the Nuggets so far this season, they were looking like a little bit of a disappointment. They're picking it up a little bit now, and it's because of their main strength, which is their pick and roll action and their pick and pop action. And I'm specifically talking about the pick and pop with Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. We know how good Jokic is as a playmaker, but also how good he's been this season in the pick and pop and shooting from three, coming off of a pick and roll or a pick and pop out to the three. And he's very good at knocking down that three-point shot at the top of the arc. So that's their main strength, pick and roll and pick and pop action, especially with Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. It allows their offense to flow really well. And then for their weakness, it's obviously defense, but in specific, their inside defense. This team gets killed in the paint, especially this season, and it's because they don't have a rim protector. Well, they do, but he's sitting on the bench. Anyway, let's move on to the other team before I blow up on the Nuggets again. So now for the Golden State Warriors, it was hard to find really like a team strength for them. So I just have to go with Steph Curry and the action that they put him in when he's coming off of off-ball screens, isolating, playmaking, and doing all his dribble moves, shooting his threes. Everything like that is really keeping the Warriors in contention for a playoff spot this year, and Steph's really absolutely carrying them. So like I mentioned, really their action with him in their offense is their main strength and what's keeping them alive so far this season. And then in terms of their weakness, it's probably their depth. They don't really have a lot of consistent bench pieces that can come off the bench and provide them with consistent scoring. So scoring off of their bench is definitely their main weakness. Moving on to the Houston Rockets, who have been a really interesting team this year, and when it comes to strengths and weaknesses, I think a lot of people would pick their defense as their main strength this year, and their defense has been very good, but for me, I don't think their production on that end of the floor is sustainable, so I'm actually going to go with their pick and roll production on offense as their biggest strength so far this year. We know that they have Christian Wood, who in my opinion is the best in the league at rolling to the basket, and when they had Harden, I thought that Harden and Wood would be an awesome duo, especially in the pick and roll, and we know what happened to James Harden, but especially now with John Wall and Victor Oladipo coming onto the team, I think that putting them in the pick and roll with Christian Wood is going to be an absolutely lethal play for them for the entire season and in the future, and something that's really going to define their offense. And so far this season, they've shown how good of a play that is. I think it's their main strength, and I think they should use it a lot more down the stretch. And in terms of their weakness, I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's three-point shooting. Less than a year ago, the Rockets were completely buying into small ball and three-point shooting, and now they're not really a good three-point shooting team, to be honest. Moving on to the LA Clippers, who have been a very good team this year. which is expected, and I wonder if this is going to carry over to the playoffs, which I think it might be able to this season. But in terms of their main strength, it's been their offense, how consistent their offense has been, especially with their star power, but in particular their three-point shooting. This team is shooting around 41% from three as a team, which is absolutely unheard of and easily the best in the league. They have lots of good guys that can shoot the three on the perimeter, and that's definitely their main strength. And in terms of their main weakness, they don't really have a huge weakness, but it's probably still team defense, because this team has tons of great individual defenders like Kawhi, Paul George, Patrick Beverley, but over the last year and this year, they still haven't been able to figure out their team's chemistry and their communication fully on that end of the floor, and I think that's something they're going to have to do if they want to win the championship. So now moving on to the Los Angeles Lakers, and I'll keep this one quick because the Lakers are the closest thing you're going to get in the league to a flawless team, and they're easily championship favorites again this season, and they have three main strengths that I couldn't really even pick between because they're just so defined by these three things, and it's what won them a championship. The first one is star power, self-explanatory. They have LeBron James and Anthony Davis. The next one is inside scoring. A lot of their scoring comes from inside the paint, and they have tons of players that are dominant scoring inside. And then the next one is defense. I think this year they have the number one ranked defense in the league. Last year they were top 5. They're always going to have a great defense. And in terms of their weakness, again, it's hard to pick one. It still has to be three-point shooting just like it was last year, but they don't even need a good three-point shooting team to win another championship. Next up, we got the Memphis Grizzlies, who have been a pretty big surprise this season, especially on the defensive end of the floor, as they actually rank second in the league currently in defensive efficiency as I'm recording this, and that is easily their biggest strength so far this season. It's been a big surprise and something that is bringing them a lot of success, but their biggest weakness is still three-point shooting, and we know that without Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. for a while, they haven't been in a playoff spot, but they are fighting for one because of their defense. Their three-point shooting needs to be improved, though, because they don't have any sharpshooters on the team, and really no one that can consistently knock down the three at a high level, so that's something they're going to have to clean up if they want to get into a playoff spot. Next up, we got the Timberwolves. Let's be honest, the Timberwolves haven't been very good this season, and if I had to point out one main strength and a positive for them, it would be young talent, since they have a very good duo in D'Angelo Russell and Karl Anthony Towns on the offensive end when they're healthy, and some other great young players on the team like Anthony Edwards and Malik Beasley. So on the offensive end of the floor, their young talent is definitely a strength for them, but they have a lot of weaknesses, and there's actually two that stand out, and it's their defense and their three-point shooting. In three-point percentage, they rank near the bottom in the league, and same with defensive efficiency. They're one of the worst teams in the league when it comes to that, and they're going to have to figure out a better defensive system and acquire a lot of more good defenders if they want to succeed in this league. For the New Orleans Pelicans, they've been a little bit of a disappointment this season with all the young talent they have, and I think it's for a specific reason, which I'm going to talk about in their weakness, but in terms of their strength, it has to be perimeter defense. There was a time where this team was very good in defensive efficiency and one of the best defensive teams in the league, and I think they still do have the potential to be that, and it's mostly because of their perimeter defense and how they have elite perimeter defenders like Lonzo Ball, Eric Bledsoe, and Josh Hart, and their weakness is team chemistry. I mean, this team has so much young talent, and I just think they need a little bit more time playing with Stan Van Gundy's system and playing with each other, communicating on defense, and figuring out their offensive system, and maybe next year they'll be one of the top teams in the league if they can get some more chemistry with each other. Moving on to the OKC Thunder, their biggest strength has also been perimeter defense, just like the New Orleans Pelicans. Their defense so far this season has been pretty good, and it starts with guys like George Hill and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander guarding the perimeter, and especially Lou Dort, who is, in my opinion, one of the best defenders in the league and has continued that this season. And then their weakness is just overall offense and how they don't really have anyone that can go out there and consistently get a bucket other than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I can see this team having a lot of problems down the stretch when it comes to scoring and clutch time, especially down the stretch in this season and so far this season, because other than Shai, they don't really have anyone that can go out there and consistently score at a high level. Moving on to the Phoenix Suns, and going into the season, I thought that their biggest strength would definitely be offense and just how it overall flows with their scorer in Devin Booker, a great playmaker in Chris Paul, and DeAndre Ayton down low to man the post and clean up the glass. But so far this season, it's been defense. On that end of the floor, they're led by Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton down low, and then role players like Mikal Bridges, Cameron Payne, and Jay Crowder have also done a great job in the defensive end of the floor, and the Suns are playing great right now because of their defense. That's their main strength, and their main weakness has to be rebounding. Other than DeAndre Ayton down low, they don't have anyone that can consistently clean up the glass, and they give up a lot of second chance points just like my Toronto Raptors, and it's something they're going to have to clean up if they want to contend. For the Portland Trailblazers, their biggest strength is their three-point shooting. For the last 1 or 2 years, their biggest strength has been this, and it's self-explanatory. You have a guy like Damian Lillard who is consistently a machine from three-point range, and his deep range. They call him Logo Lillard for a reason. And then they're also surrounded with a lot of great shooters, especially CJ McCollum. I like to call those guys the baby Splash Brothers because really they're just playing at such a high level right now and probably a top 10 duo in the league. But overall, the Blazers' biggest strength is their three-point shooting, and their weakness is defense. I said that in my standings predictions I didn't think the Blazers would make the playoffs because of their defense, and last year was third last in the league in defensive efficiency. And so far this year, it's not doing well either. And if they want to contend for a championship, they have to get more good defenders and figure out a better defensive system for their team, because right now it's just not working out for them on defense. Moving on to the Sacramento Kings, who personally I thought would be the worst team in the Western Conference, and I honestly still think they will be, but so far this year they've actually overperformed a little bit, and it started with the scoring production that they've got from their guards, especially De'Aaron Fox scoring around the rim, Buddy Hield scoring from the perimeter, and Tyrese Halliburton looking really good with his overall game, especially his scoring, and how I think he might be a favorite for Rookie of the Year right now. So their scoring production from their backcourt and overall their guards on the whole team has been really good, and their weakness is defense. Again, another team that needs to clean up their defense if they want to contend for a playoff spot, and they don't have a lot of good defenders on the team right now, so their main weakness is definitely their defense. Second last team we've got today is the San Antonio Spurs, who don't have anything special on paper, but they still have Greg Popovich, who in my opinion is the greatest coach of all time, and the Spurs are always going to be contending for a playoff spot because of this. And something Greg Popovich's teams have always done is protect the ball very well, and so far this year the Spurs are showing that, and they're easily last in the league when it comes to turnovers. So the fundamentals and not turning the ball over, doing the little things like that is something the Spurs are very good at. And then their main weakness has to be their star power, because they don't really have anyone that, in my opinion, is in the top 40 in the league. They have DeMar DeRozan, but other than that, they really don't have any stars that can push them into the playoffs and contending for a championship, despite having Greg Popovich as their coach. And last but not least, well, certainly not least, actually first, since they're first in the Western Conference right now, I've got the Utah Jazz. And the Utah Jazz so far this season have been an incredible team, one of, if not the best teams in the league, and they're the only team in the league that's top 5 in offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency. So obviously their offense and defense is both very good. Their defense obviously led by Rudy Gobert, but their main strength that I pointed out for them is their three-point shooting on offense. They're the second best team in the league in terms of three-point percentage, shooting around 40% from three this year, and that's something that I think is really going to propel them to staying as a top team in the Western Conference, and it's going to keep their 10-game winning streak going here, in my opinion. They're a very strong team, especially shooting the three, and their weakness, they don't have a lot of weaknesses, but their weakness is probably depth. They can't run a very deep rotation. They have guys like Jordan Clarkson and Joe Ingles coming off the bench for them, but they don't have a lot of guys past that, which probably isn't going to be that big of a problem for them, because in the playoffs, they're probably just going to run a 7 to 8 man rotation anyway. But if I had to point out a weakness, it's probably depth, but they have a lot of strengths and are a very good overall team. So there you have it. That is the end of today's video. I went through every team's biggest strength and weakness in the Western Conference. As I mentioned a couple days ago, I posted the Eastern Conference version of this video. So if you missed that, go ahead and support the channel and make sure you check that one out down below. It'll be in the description. Thank you all for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.